welcome to my series of interviews with leaders and visionaries. And today I'm going to be continuing this series by speaking with my guest, Sandra Nomoto. Now, as you will know, I cover topics such as spirituality, consciousness, diet, and in particular the vegan diet, and how this is all interrelated. And Sandra certainly ticks all of the boxes, as you will see when I read out her short bio for you. So Sandra is an ethical marketer and book whisperer. She is a spiritual, health-conscious vegan, an author and solopreneur who works with ethical businesses and authors. And she has actually written the world's first vegan marketing book. So as you can see, she has been on quite the journey. Very interesting. So welcome, Sandra. So happy to have you here today and to learn about your journey. Perhaps we can start with just giving a little bit of background. Perhaps you could just let us know what kind of training you undertook and the type of work that you were involved in prior to the work that you're involved in today. And then we'll follow your journey on from there. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me on, Kim. It's a real pleasure. So I went to school and got my degree in English literature and film studies, and really did not know where that was gonna lead me. I just really followed my passions, in post-secondary education, and was actually invited to intern for a public relations firm in Vancouver. This is where I live. Didn't know anything about public relations, but, within a year and a half, I went from intern to assistant to the partners, really learned a lot about media relations, event planning, a little bit of marketing. And when I left that company, I just knew it wasn't a fit for me. Just intuition told me, don't go and apply for another public relations firm because you don't have control over the clients that you have to work with. And there were very many, but, there's always a handful of some unpleasant people that you work with when you don't have, when you work for somebody else. So I decided to start my first business, and that was, just as an independent publicist. And over the years, turned it into a little agency, had a small team working with me. And I really switched the focus from clients that, I personally had fun with. So lifestyle, fashion, events, and really, at some point in around 2011, I decided I really wanted to try and work with companies whose values aligned with mine. So folks who were socially or environmentally responsible. And so I rebranded my company to Conscious PR, and I ran that until mid 2018. So that was the year that I closed the business, which happened to be the same year that I went vegan. Mm-hmm. And and kind of was figuring out my next career path for about a year and a half, and then came to the idea for this business that I run now, initially as a vegan copywriter. So that's how it started, and now I have a whole other suite of services. So so that's kind of how my career journey unfolded.
So you were learning from experience that you really wanted to work with people who were ethically minded and shared your values. I guess so many people are in business today and they're working with people who are not aligned with their own values. So that makes it quite a stressful and unhappy, work situation in a way, because it's so much better if you can be aligned with your own truth. So it's great that you kind of figured that out, quite early on and didn't stick with it, because I think, I don't know, would you agree? I think so many people just sort of get stuck there and then they just feel that they have to continue along that path. It's
absolutely.
It's quite difficult, isn't it, to break away? Did you find the breaking away difficult, or do you think you'd got so far along your journey by then that it was just a natural next step?
Yeah, it was quite natural, actually, because as I was networking in those early years of my first business, I kept meeting like people who are intuitives, who I'd never encountered before, before that point in my adult life, and people who were really into sustainability. And, I called these folks my crowd, and I thought, like I need to shift my business in some way so that I can work with more of these people who are making the world a better place. That's really how I summed it up. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think very many companies lead with values like that.
Yes.
Businesses are built on profit a lot of the time.
Yes.
And I think the culture is changing. We can have more of these conversations about how we speak to each other and how we speak to clients, whereas maybe decades earlier, you would really just have to suck it up. If you dealt with a difficult client, you couldn't express yourself and how uncomfortable or painful, this work experience is with that person. You'd have to really just suck it up because they're the ones paying your bills. And so I think there's been a real shift in terms of even workplace culture, that we weren't having 20 years ago.
Yeah, which is good to see. So you mentioned that a lot of businesses are just purely profit driven, and of course they do have to make a profit because they have to pay their employees. Do you think that being profit driven and ethically minded can coexist?
Yes, I think it can. And as part of, my rebranding and moving more into social impact circles, I did meet a lot of these folks who were very financially successful, but they also had people, planet, animals in mind. So, Patagonia is one of these examples that, recently turned into a nonprofit, an environmental nonprofit, right? So yeah, I do think it's possible, and many anti-capitalists, I think, will disagree because capitalism is one of the major drivers of what we're doing to our planet. But this is the world we live in, right? Businesses run the world in some way. So I think, yeah, if we can definitely have good values in mind as we're building up businesses. Yeah, I think, yeah, and that's why I do the work that I do. I'm so passionate about supporting vegan businesses because I do believe that they are a huge key to solving the world's biggest problems.
I guess it's a matter of getting the priorities right, isn't it? Putting the heart first. And I think often if you do put your heart first, then the rest can follow more easily if your heart leads the way, rather than money leading the way, which has so often been the case still is the case today, but hopefully more and more people are waking up to the fact that we do need to bring ethics back into business. So you're in the right place at the right time. I'm absolutely sure of that. Now, you mentioned in 2018 this coincided with your switch to a vegan diet. Can you tell us how that happened for you?
Yes. So it was an 11-year journey for me that started with watching Earthlings at the end of 2007. So that was really the first time that I had seen how our food is made and what we do to animals in various industries. And I just decided I need to make a change. So it took me a few years to eliminate meat from my diet. And then for a good number of years, I was still pescatarian. So on the weekends, I would eat maybe eat some seafood, some dairy still. During the week, I learned to cook either vegetarian or vegan meals. And then it wasn't until my husband and I went on our honeymoon in New York City. We ate at Iron Chef Morimoto's restaurant, and I had what I call the best seafood meal I've had in my life, and decided it's not going to get any better than this. So I'm going to leave on a high note. And that was my last seafood meal. So from then it was just dairy. So pizza and ice cream are some of my favorite foods. But I really only was a vegetarian for about a year. And that was because of health reasons. So for many years, not related to my dietary transitions, I've had this undiagnosed condition that involves, bloating, gas, really painful acid reflux, sometimes even vomiting in the middle of the night. So I had a really bad bout in the spring of 2018 and went back to my naturopath and said, I need more answers here. And she said, let's try a food sensitivity test. So I took this test, found out that I was sensitive to dairy, among other things. And I would later learn that most people of color are actually sensitive to dairy. And so I did a 4-month cleanse of all of these foods that, may contribute to the triggers of my symptoms. And I came to the end of that 4 months and said, hey, I was able to do without dairy, and I think I can do this from now on. So I guess I'm vegan now. And so that's, sort of the date that I count from. And of course, food is the first hurdle. Not purchasing clothing and other sort of household products that are made from animals was an easy step after that. So that's how it unfolded for me.
Okay, well, a lot of people who'll be listening to this will be interested in the your vegan journey. So we'll just unpack it a little more. So you say you initially gave up meat. That's where you started. Yes. And how did you actually go about that? Did you just one day say no meat, or did you cut down the portions, or did you say I'll get rid of beef first? Or how can you remember how you went about that?
Yes. So I thought about the meat that I was eating, and chicken was I was eating the most amount of that particular animal. So I decided to cut out beef and any other red meat first. So that took me about a year, and then a year, kind of after that, I decided to cut out chicken, and that's when I started looking to other protein sources like more seafood, even though I was never a big fan of seafood or eggs. And then learning to cook with other sorts of proteins like tofu, so beans, lentils, those kinds of things. So it was about 2 years that it took me to fully cut meat out.
Yeah. So and you were substituting with the beans and the lentils and the legumes and things, which is a good thing because that they're quite filling, aren't they? And I often say to people, if you are cutting down on your meat, then put the legumes in there and you'll find, you get that sort of satisfied feeling, and the lentils and stuff like that. Yeah. So you were definitely doing the right thing there and going about it in the right way. And then you say
I should say it took me a couple of years to really learn to cook whole food plant-based. So initially I was using a lot of the alternatives, but this was back in, around 2010. There really weren't very many options in my grocery store like there are now. There are maybe about 1 or 2 brands, and I would only use them if I absolutely needed to because they weren't very good. So, if it was either, I get the substance or I give it the taste, So once I let go of that reliance on the substitutes and was armed with more cookbooks and recipes and things like that. That's when I think, when you really open up your arsenal to the whole foods is really when, you really get to add to, just your arsenal of meals.
Of what there is. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people do obviously go for those processed, fake meats and stuff. And I think, they do have a place. I think they can be a bridge for people, don't you think? Because
absolutely,
you're used to that kind of taste and the texture, which those kinds of products give you. But I think they should also be seen as a bridge because of they're heavily processed, a lot of them, aren't they? But I think I definitely think they have a place in helping people move from eating, the full-on Western diet to, a vegan diet or plant-based diet, definitely. So then moving forwards, you then gave up the fish after you'd had that wonderful fish meal.
Yep.
And did you eat a lot of fish prior to that?
No, I didn't. As I said, I was never, my parents used to cook certain traditional Filipino dishes with seafood, and I was never a big fan of it. So it was really on weekends, going out to restaurants, I would maybe get the fish and chips option, which is really junk, right? Maybe the other seafood option, but I was never a huge fan of that. So once I had that really good meal in New York City, I was like, that's it. That's
Yeah.
yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. And it's the same for me. You know, fish came after the meat. And it actually took me quite a while to sort of give up the fish. Not because I ate a lot, but because I don't know, I didn't have the same initially before I looked more into it. I didn't have that same empathy for fish in the ocean that you would have for a land animal.
Yeah.
You tend to think that the land animal can feel the pain, whereas of their death and their slaughter and so on, more than maybe a fish can. And I know there's a debate as to whether fish can feel pain or not, but the research that I've done on this actually shows that they have these nociceptors and various receptors throughout their bodies, which indicate that they can feel pain. And unfortunately, a lot of these receptors are in the mouth, where the anglers put these hooks and things. So I think it's I am not convinced that fish cannot feel pain. I think it's put out by anglers and similar groups that it's quite all right to go fishing because they don't feel the pain, but that's not how I've read it. Have you looked into that at all?
I wouldn't say I've heavily researched it, but yes, as you've said, I've come across articles that have done studies and as you said, found that there are pain receptors, that fish do have pain receptors. And even if you look at what they look like when they're out of water,
yeah,
they're struggling. They're struggling as much as a slaughtered animal would, when you slit their throat. So yeah, I mean, just even anecdotally looking at them when they're not when they're about to die, would tell me that they are suffering.
Yeah, exactly. Everything wants to
By
live,
taking them out.
doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
They've got that life force within them. They want to hold on to their life, just like we do. So, yeah. Um, okay. And then the dairy came, later on, due to your health issues. Yeah. As you say, a lot of people do have health issues around dairy. I found for myself that it was once I gave up the dairy that I really felt the difference within my body. I mean, I didn't have any particular health issues, but when I gave up the dairy, I just felt kind of like a lightness. It was like years of sludge had gone from my body, and I felt a lightness, which I didn't feel when I gave up the meat or the fish, but I did with the dairy. So there's definitely something, quite strong about that within our tissues of our bodies that have an effect. Yeah. The lactose intolerance, isn't it? I think it's something like 65 to 70% of people globally have lactose intolerance.
Yeah.
Well, I think, when you realize we're not baby calves, then perhaps it stands to reason, it's not the product that is intended and designed for a human being. So it's not surprising that a lot of people do have issues with it. Yeah. Okay. So moving on from there then, we also then you just touched briefly upon the fact that it's not just the diet, but it's the whole lifestyle. People think of veganism as just a diet, but it isn't. It is the complete lifestyle. And so it therefore impacts your choice of clothing, your choice of furniture, your accessories, your makeup. It's like everything has to be looked at with fresh eyes, doesn't it? Maybe could you talk a little bit about that and how your journey progressed in that respect?
Yeah, I would say I don't think I made any huge shifts. For about a year after I was eating a vegan diet, I realized in the wintertime I was wearing my wool coat and these leather boots. And I thought to myself, I've got to get rid of these and make, I always recommend to people, don't just go and start throwing away your clothing. Replace when you can, when it's either worn out or you can donate it. So I got myself a nice vegan puffy coat during the pandemic, and some water resistant vegan shoes, a non-leather belt, and then I've still got my down duvet and something, and and things like that again I will replace with a vegan option when the time comes that it's worn out. So but yeah, I will tell you the probably the biggest problem after diet is finding certain products that are vegan that you would not think, like, why would we need to use any animal products? So something simple like lip balm. I go to the drugstore, pretty much all the options there have beeswax. And if it doesn't say beeswax, it'll use a scientific name like Sarah Alba, which again, I'll buy something and then for whatever reason, I'll look up what is this Sarah Alba and realize it's beeswax. So, so it's certain things like that I think need a huge shift. Yes, I understand we've been making lip balm with beeswax for probably centuries, but can we find one ingredient that does the same thing, that is plant-based and really can ease up the burden on these bees? So yeah, I think certain industries are definitely overdue for some disruption when it comes to animal products. But that's my biggest pet peeve is when I don't realize there's an animal product in something that I buy because it's disguised as glycerin or another fancy word. Lanolin really means wool. If you don't know that. So yeah, so that's my pet peeve is those scientific names that you don't even realize are animals.
Yeah, so there's still a lot of education that needs to take place around those issues there. And it is a little bit of a dilemma once you do become a vegan and then you start looking at other things that have been made with animals, like the skins of animals for your leather furniture and stuff. And you look around your house and you think, well, I've got a leather chair, which I bought years ago and it's still perfectly okay. So what do I do now? Do I throw it away? Can I afford to even do that? It puts people in a bit of a dilemma. So I think, everyone just has to make their own choice as to what feels right in their own hearts. Some people just can't bear to sit on a chair like that anymore. That's how they feel about it. For me, I thought, well, I can't. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't buy it. I can't go back in time. I've now got it. I can't afford to replace it. But I just make the decision that from now on, moving forwards, if I do buy any more furniture or any more accessories or what have you, I will deliberately, go out and choose something that is vegan friendly, that doesn't come from an animal. So that was the way that I dealt with it. And that made me feel comfortable. Again, this is being following your heart and going what your heart tells you is the important thing. And if there's somebody who has that opposite effect and they can't sit on that chair anymore, then perhaps their heart is telling them it's best that they just remove it. So I think when you get to that stage, everyone has to make their own decisions about what's the best way forwards. And it sounds like you and I kind of made the same decision around that at that point. Yes, it's just that you're when you move forward, you're now living differently and you're having an impact in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you said, leading with your heart. And I hear the phrase so often, vote with your dollar. And I think it's the same idea. It's if you knew that you were purchasing an animal or a product made with an animal, like, would you really support that? And a lot of people, I don't think, stop and think about that when they're making these sorts of decisions, whether smaller or large, a large purchase. But that's really what it is. It's leading with your heart and your dollars reflecting what your values are. And so, I think when you start, again, like me, looking at ingredients and things that you're buying, you realize how much of a choice you have as a consumer in supporting the industries that, you want to move forward.
Yeah. And what about your husband? Is he vegan?
My husband is not, no.
Mm. And this brings another complication in, doesn't it? Where, 'cause, I have a family, and they may not all, want to follow the same path as you've followed. So then you have to take everybody's considerations, into your consideration. Yeah. So how has that worked out with you and your husband? Has it caused any conflict around things you eat or you buy? Have you worked out a good way forwards?
Yeah, well, I mean, we started dating right around the time when I saw Earthlings, and so he's really seen me on this entire journey, and did not decide to go along with it with me, which is fine. He knew vegan was always the goal, and 5 years ago I finally reached it. And when we first moved in together, this is about a decade ago, we were really cooking separately. We buy our separate groceries, we cook separate meals. He is a fantastic cook, can really make a way better vegan meal than I can actually. But yeah, he needs to eat animal proteins and certain products. And so that's kind of how we've always operated. And there's a level of mutual respect there. I made vows that said I would be with this person my entire life, no matter what. And so that's kind of where we are. And I've talked to him actually about cultivated meat and whether he
Oh
would
yeah.
make the switch.
Mm.
If that were to, obviously it's going to be really expensive at first, but if it were to start gaining mainstream I guess purchasing, the price will go down at some point, right? That's the hope, that it will reach the same price as our conventional butchered meat products that he's currently buying. And he said, yeah, I would make the switch. So there's a glimmer of hope there, in that someday he might be maybe not vegan, but at least vegetarian, and maybe he'll still
Yeah.
eat certain animal byproducts. But yeah, the hope is there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And everyone's on their own journey. With me, my daughter and my husband, when I first went vegan, they said, well, they were not going to be following me. So get that clear. But now, my husband's a vegetarian. He has given up meat. I
Right.
didn't pressurize him into doing it, but he just did it. So that's great. So we don't have all, lots of meat in the house like we did have initially. So that's good not to have that around. And my daughter has cut down substantially on it, and she'll only have it when she buys it herself. So there's progress. It's little by little, and they're on their journey, and I'm on mine, and we respect everyone's choices. Yeah, so that's the way forwards there. That's good. Now, you mentioned Earthlings, that this was a key turning point for you. Now, people watching this or listening to this may not know what Earthlings is. Could you tell us a little about that?
Sure. So I believe it was initially screened in 2005. It's now free to watch online. It's on YouTube, and the filmmaker intentionally has made it free for all to watch. I call it one of the just groundbreaking documentaries that really shows you what we use animals for, obviously for food and consumption, but in other industries as well. Really well done. It's narrated by Joaquin Phoenix, who's almost been vegan since birth, I believe. And yeah, it's just one of those seminal documentaries. I tell people, if you can only watch one, just watch Earthlings, because veganism is really about the animals. That's it's really about, even though people may be vegan for other reasons. And I think that documentary, among others, but that one in particular just really shows you how we use animals in industry.
Okay, so it's really focused on the animals, because, like you say, some people go vegan because of their health, or because of the planet, because it's related to that as well. But Earthlings really focuses on the animal side of it. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the ethical veganism, if you like, because you're doing it for the animals. Yeah. Okay, so if anyone hasn't seen Earthlings, do have a look. You'll have to, be feeling strong before you start looking at it, because it's very hard hitting, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is I went into the screening not knowing what I was going to watch. It was completely by accident that I was invited to this screening,
Mm-hmm.
and so within 10 minutes, you really start to see how these animals are treated. And I remember this particular screening was at the University of British Columbia, where I graduated, and I saw these big athletes with their athletic jackets walking out of the theater within 10 minutes, and I thought, like, if these guys can't even sit and tolerate this footage, I'm going to. So it was really impactful for me. And yeah, and I suggest to everyone, just learn how your food is made and what we're using animals for. And if watching something like this is not something you can do, there are books. You can follow vegan influencers, vegan health professionals. There's many vegans in many industries that you can follow on social media. One of the books, Eating Animals, I think describes it pretty well. So yeah, I would recommend seeing it if you can, but if you cannot, then yeah, there are other ways to learn.
Yeah, yeah. As you say, there is quite a lot out there now. So as long, if you all you need to do is spend 5 or 10 minutes looking for something, you'll find something that you can become informed about online. So yeah. Okay. And now, how does spirituality fit into all of this? I know you say you're a person to be led from your heart and intuition. So do you have a spiritual practice, for instance?
Yes, I grew up with religion. So, in a Filipino family, I went to a Catholic school for 13 years and took Christian education. And even as an early adult, I was still going to church. But yeah, there was a moment when I realized, I had to leave the Catholic Church. It didn't the parish that I had grown up in, and attended this one Sunday, wasn't taking kindly to LGBTQ plus folks, and at the time, two of my best friends had just come out as gay, and so I decided this isn't for me, and God and I are going to take our relationship out of the church, but in it, yeah, just manifesting in a different form. And so yeah, it kind of shows up in a lot of ways. So about every year I get, between 1 to 3 intuitive readings, because I think there are people on the planet who have a special gift and can help us connect to, whatever you want to call it, God, the divine, ancestors who have passed, just those folks that we can't have easy access to. I do feel really connected to my ancestors who've passed. And I feel like my intuition, and when I meditate, is when I get messages from them, or every now and then I'll see a sign that only myself and the other person who's passed knows about, and it'll be kind of like they're saying hello to me in regular life.
Mm.
And yeah, I would say meditation is probably my biggest spiritual practice. And that involves some breath work, saying affirmations, doing prayers, and then some visualizations when I'm actually meditating. And I do that twice a day, every day. It'll be 10 years into that practice next year.
Mm.
And yeah, I would say, yeah, that's kind of what it looks like for me now.
Yeah, that's amazing that you do that twice a day. How long is your meditation for each time?
20 minutes.
20 minutes. Okay. So two lots of 20 minutes each day.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And you start by doing a deep breathing exercise. Do you say breath work?
Some breath work. Yeah,
Breath work. And then you just sit silently.
that's right. Yeah,
Mm.
so I learned the TM technique. This was almost 10 years ago, which does use a mantra, but again, as I've said, I've kind of created my own practice now, and a mantra is no longer part of that. So yeah, just breathing now.
Okay. And do you find that your intuition or your bursts of insight generally come to you in those quiet times, or just they could come throughout the day sometime, at a time unrelated to the meditation? How do you find the bursts of insight come to you?
Yeah, I find that they're usually in meditation, or if it is when I'm, just out and about, it has to be quiet. That's kind of the rule. Sometimes it's in the shower. But again, so long as usually it tends to come in a quiet place. It can't be,
Okay.
if I'm at a concert or anything like that, or a restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah. As people talk about it as being as like a kind of a download rather than hearing or seeing, although I know that some people do, but generally speaking, it tends to be just like a burst of light, if you like, an insight that just is like a download. Is that how you experience it as well?
Yeah, I would say so. And I'm a big thinker. Like I'm a writer, and so I use words, and that's just how I process. And so it'll come like a voice, even
Mm.
if it's my own voice.
Mm.
Um, that's how I hear it. That's how I
Mm.
get the
Yeah.
download.
Well, that's great because that gives you confidence. If you're receiving some kind of guidance, it gives you confidence to move forwards because you know that you've had that sort of little nudge to go in that direction. And I guess it doesn't always necessarily mean that everything is going to work out, like a bed of roses. There may still be hurdles to overcome, but at least you have that inner confidence and knowing that this is the way forwards. So therefore, there will be a solution to each problem along the way. That's what I find with these kinds of inner knowings and this guidance, this intuition that you get. That's the real value of it. That it really helps you to keep on course and gives you the confidence to move forwards.
Yeah, but I sort of liken it to being like in a forest in a dark path. Like it could be nighttime, and the download is like that bit of flashlight that you get that shows you
Yeah.
the way ahead. It's
Mm.
not going to show you too far ahead,
Mm.
because if somebody had told me I would be doing, having a chat with you
Mm.
and being immersed in the vegan community as I am, um, 4 years ago, I would not have believed you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, as I said, I started this business I run now because I sat down to meditate, and my intuition said, and it was a booming voice. I will tell you, I've never heard it this loud. And so when I heard it, I went, all right, I'm going to listen this time. And and it said, you're vegan now and you'll always be writing. So put those things together and go and see what you can do. And so that, I started out as a copywriter, just asked my network, who do you know who runs a vegan business, who needs support with their content? And then years later, I've written a book, and I'm doing other, marketing support tactics and working with authors now. So yeah, you could not have told me that I would be here when
Mm.
I first
Mm.
listened to that meditation. And so
Mm.
I feel like it nudges you into the next step, but it's not going to give you that full picture of where you will
Doesn't give
be.
you too far ahead, just the next step. And I suppose
Because
it's up to us to then be faithful and do that next step. Yeah.
yeah, because I think you could also get scared if you see the
Yeah.
full vision and be
Yeah.
like how the heck would I ever get there? But
Yeah.
it's a series of steps
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we take to get there. So
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, it could be, very overwhelming and too overwhelming that you even don't start. So in
yeah,
a way, it's a kind of a little bit of a safeguard just to give you the next step. Although as humans, we always want to know more, don't we? We're curious,
or the curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you say this particular insight was really booming. So was this during one of your quiet times?
It was. And interestingly, so this was at the end of 2019. Again, I was exploring different career paths, didn't think that I was going to stay as a marketer. And I had actually just finished researching a lot of the vegan media outlets that were out there, and seeing if I could maybe become a contributing writer. And I found, unless you are applying for a full-time position. You could maybe, you know, write here and write there. Not all of these outlets pay. And I sort of was discouraged by that and thought, oh, okay, well, maybe I could make a part-time income, but not enough to make a living. And so it was in that spirit that I sat down to meditate, and it was almost like, yeah, like a just a doorway opened up, and and I just received that guidance and followed it.
And you just knew without a shadow of a doubt that that was your path forward. Yeah, that's great. So
or it's just okay, I'll give this a try. I've got the sign, and I'll give this a try. And when you find it works, then then you just continue on the path.
Keep going. Yeah. So maybe tell us a little bit more then about the work that you do right now. I know you've written this amazing book. When did you write the book, by the way?
So it was published in November 2022, so almost a year ago. But I got the idea for it again through an intuitive reading. So this was spring 2021. An intuitive said, you know, spirit guides are saying you're going to write a book this year, and I thought, what? Okay. So I just started thinking about what I could possibly write about, and I thought, you know, I've always been interested in marketing. Let's see if there's a vegan book out there that already covers this topic. And I found, nope, nobody's done it. And the closest thing was Katrina Fox's Vegan Ventures. She published that in 2015. And that was really the only vegan business book that was out there. So I thought, wow, like what a gap in the market there is. And so yeah, fall 2021 is when I started sending out requests for stories for the book, and by January 2022 I'd finished my first draft of the manuscript.
Wonderful. Yeah, so it's out there now at Amazon and various other places. I'm sure we'll definitely put a link to that, of course, in the description below. But that's great. So helping vegan businesses to market themselves basically is what it's about. Yeah, it's got lots of tips and tricks in there for them. Yeah.
So yeah, I my main goal was to see what vegan businesses were doing to in terms of marketing that made them successful. And so 47 contributors shared stories about what they're doing, about a little bit about their marketing strategy. And because this is also a marketing guide, so I talked about really all of the tactics that are out there that you can try. And there were some gaps in some tactics that really none of the contributors talked about. So I did some more research, got another few dozen examples online, and asked for permission to use those. And so, yeah, so in total, there's upwards of 100 companies mentioned, you know, that are, or at least were around in 2022. And it's sort of my gift to the business world, especially to vegans running businesses.
No, that's really great. Yeah. So what do you do on a day-to-day basis? What with your business? Could you tell us a little bit more about your current work?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different every day, depending on the clients who come my way. But yeah, pretty much I work like Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. It doesn't really stray away too much from that. And one of my big goals this year was to ghostwrite a book. And so luckily I got some experience doing that for a friend. He's going to go and pitch it to publishers and hopefully get that published in a few years. And I'm now ghostwriting my second book. So really enjoying that process. I've also worked with a few vegan authors on their books. So editing, formatting their books, and didn't think that I would work on fiction, because nonfiction is typically what I read, but a vegan author came my way and asked for some editing and formatting help for her youth vegan fiction book. So so got to work on that, which is
So
again,
you spend a lot of your time writing. Do you feel like you're a writer at heart?
Oh yes, I've always known that. It's one of the first skills that I picked up as a child. So my mother taught my siblings and I to read when roughly 3 years old. So this was even before we were going to preschool. So it's really a skill that I've carried with me. And as I said earlier, I got my degree in English literature and then got to, to work in public relations and marketing. And so words are very much a part of my life. I can't say the same for my siblings. They've gone off in other career directions, but yeah, certainly working with words is I would say my biggest skill. And I feel like it's a gift that I've been given that,
Okay.
I think everybody's got a gift, and we're here to use it in positive ways, and so that's how I choose to use it.
Yeah. So apart from the writing, you also help people with vegan businesses and ethical businesses with their sort of online marketing as well, don't you? What kind of things do you do in that realm?
Yeah, it really depends on the needs of the business, but usually I get asked to write, say, website copy if they're relaunching or launching a website. A lot of blog and article writing, writing emails, and then occasionally, not very often, but I can write social media descriptions for their content. So yeah, anything to do with sort of content writing.
Yeah, content writing, yeah, and helping ethical businesses. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really fascinating. That's amazing, the journey that you've been on and how far you've come in a short time since you fully went vegan and, writing your book and all sorts of changes in your life. That's just amazing. I'm so glad to know that your business is doing well. Is the book doing good too? Have you had a good response?
Definitely a good response from the vegan world.
Mm,
I wish I could say the same for the general business and
mm,
marketing world.
mm.
Maybe in 5 or 10 years,
Yeah.
when veganism is more popular, they'll look
Yeah.
at this book. But
Mm,
yeah, but I'm happy, really happy with the response that it's received. People have been so kind to review it online. So if you're listening to this and you've got a copy, please do review it so other folks know just your opinion about it. But yeah, it's I would say it's kind of catapulted me in the vegan world in a way that I didn't really expect. But
yeah.
but the
Yeah.
community has been very kind and supportive, and I'm
Yeah.
super grateful for that.
Yeah, that's great. So, how can people find out more about your work? Where would they go to, apart from buying your book, of course? But do you have a website or the blog or anything?
Yeah, my website is where everything is. So just my name, sandranomoto.com. Yeah, my services, my book, everything is there.
Okay, yeah, and we'll put a link to that in the description as well, so if people can contact you if they need help in that direction. Yeah. Well, thanks ever so much, Sandra. Been really wonderful to speak to you and learn of your journey and all the exciting things that you're involved in and the good that you're doing in the world, helping to raise awareness about what's going on with the animals and, helping people to make this switch and also helping vegan businesses to become more prominent. So that's really great and valuable work that you're involved in. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to mention?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure, Kim. The only other thing I'll say is that yeah, if you go on my website, I have a page called List Love, and there's a section there specifically with vegan resources. So if you're listening to this, you aren't vegan, but you want to move more in that direction, I've put in all of the influencers that I follow, the movies that I've watched, the books that I've read, and hopefully, yeah, those resources will be helpful for you in your journey.
Okay, great. That's wonderful. So thanks ever so much again for being here. And thank you all for listening or watching, whatever you're doing. And please do check out the description below for the website details, the book details. And also there's a link to my website where you'll find out all about my courses and the stuff that I put out there as well. So do be sure to check that out. And thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate you all. Thank you and bye for now.
Bye.